I'll start by saying that I think there's something foundational for people, especially people who grew up in a rural or suburban area, not in the city. There's something foundational about your local woods, and that was certainly the case for me. And it officially starts when I was 12 years old, but I'll tell you about when I was 7. And to get the orientation of the woods, I'm going to put a map graphic up on screen because the woods are very large and there's a lot of facets to this. But basically, parallel to the woods at the bottom is a public park. And I was sitting on the park on the swings with my friend who we'll call the Muscle. I'm going to be using pseudonyms. I don't know why. I don't think my friends would care about anonymity, but it makes it seem a bit more, 80s Stephen King. So this was my friend the Muscle and I, and we were just swinging on the swings. And we saw a silvery disc kind of object just float down into the tree line of the woods. Really could have been anything, being logical. Could have been a balloon. Could have been, could have been a trick on our eyes, but of course to us, UFO. So that's where it kind of starts. But the first really strange thing happened when I was 12 years old. So there's the woods there. It's kind of a central point of the town. Underneath, there's the park. Both the park and the woods are vertically parallel to a golf course that always seemed to be under construction. I'm sure if I went back to my hometown now, it would still be under construction. So since like 75% of this golf course was under construction and torn to bits, with just a bunch of junk strewn about it, my friends and I called it the Scrap Wasteland, and it was private. So one day, in winter, my friends and I decided to hop the fence to the Scrap Wasteland. It was a beautiful snowy day out, and it was just this kind of, tarred up, varnished land, this snowy plains with bits of metal sticking out from the ground every which way. We were just walking, just having a bit of a day, and then we came upon this tree, and the tree was dried out like everything else in the Scrap Wasteland. But what was odd was that there was like stalks of dried corn hanging from the branches of this tree, like someone had purposefully gone around the tree in a circle and tied bits of corn to it. And they were just there, swaying in the wind, this dried corn. We were just kind of looking at it, puzzled. And my cousin, who was a bit of a wild man, or at that time, wild 12-year-old, still a bit wild, but he tore one of the pieces of the corn out, and he just looked at us and said, "Fuck it," and started eating it. And in my mind, I was a huge horror guy. I was big into fantasy sci-fi, so immediately my mind went, oh, cursed. He's cursed. But I'm his family, and a curse is also kind of epic. So I decided I can't let my cousin get cursed and not place that on myself. That would just make me a bad cousin. So I also tore a piece of corn off the tree and started to eat it. And then the rest of our friends followed suit. And we were all just standing there on this private wasteland, eating this dried corn together. And I was 12 years old. Fast forward 4 years. So I'm 16, I'm in high school. And I'm with another friend, let's call him Bubba. And Bubba and I are just walking through the streets of the town together at night. And the town is weird, okay? Because the town is like orange streetlights at night, 6 p.m., everybody's in their house, no one goes outside. So Bubba and I were feeling a bit secluded. We're just walking through the streets of our empty town under these orange ambient streetlights. And we see the entrance to the woods from the town coming up, because the woods has several entrances. Like I said, it's kind of a central point of the town. And so we say, you know what, let's just go into the woods at night. This wasn't odd or uncommon for us. The woods at night always felt like the biggest adventure that you could have in the town, so we started to go into the woods. And there are houses on a row up to the entrance of the woods on either side of the street, and on the house that was closest to the entrance, right next to the entrance, when we passed by it, we started to hear this music, and it was like this kind of opera music, but it sounded like it was coming from a record player, and the record player was a bit broken or something, so it was scratchy. It was like, that's terrible. Yeah, I was like breaking up, like, but yeah, terrible. I gotta find like a sound effect or something to throw in there, otherwise I'm not gonna be able to do that repeatedly. But anyways, so we heard that, and the only thing going through our mind was, sucks for those people that their record player is broken. And so we entered the woods. And now let me describe the path of the woods. The woods had a circular path. So from our entrance from the town, and any other entrance, you go in, you walk around. Eventually, after a while, you'll find yourself back at that entrance, unless you take some of the inner paths, which we'll get to later. So we go in onto the circular path, and we go about 20% of the way through, and there are some benches there. It's kind of like a rest stop. So we're there on the benches, just sitting, and eventually Bubba says to me, "Hey, do you hear that? That sounds like the music." "What music?" "Oh, like the music that we were hearing at the entrance of the woods." I'm like, Bubba's either pulling my chain or he's spooking himself out. So I'm like, that's impossible. We're way into the woods now. And so Bubba is just kind of like, okay, I guess it's impossible. So we walk. We get halfway through the woods, the 50% mark. And this point is like an open field that parallels a road. And across the road, there is a private preserve. So we're in this open field, and we're walking, and both of us just stop, because now we both hear the music. But logically, if this music had somehow traveled all the way to where we were, it should have been coming from the direction we just came from the path we had been walking the entire time, since that was where the house was. But it wasn't. It was coming from the complete opposite direction of the woods. Bubba and I looked at each other, and we were like, nope, not dealing with that. And we started to run, because this was scary. Like, this made no logical sense to us. So we were running, and the music when we were running sounded like, like steps behind us. Like it was getting louder and louder, chasing us, like it didn't want us to get away. And we ran all the way back through the freaking woods, and we got out onto the town, and it didn't stop. But we were calmer on the streets of the town, obviously, because we weren't there dead at night in the woods. But this music was still there, and it would now be like dancing from one side of the street to the other. It would be there, over there behind a house, and then it would be at the end of the street. And we were too scared to even approach it, so we were just like, let's take the closest path back to my house. And we did, so we got back to my house, avoiding the music as best as we could, but it was still like circling us like some kind of bird of prey. So that was that night, 16 years old. The next day, I call my friend who, let's call him Care Bear, because I know that that's going to piss him off if he ever hears this. So I call Care Bear, and I say, listen, Care Bear, there is some weird, like, grave encounters, because that was his favorite movie at the point, shit happening in the woods. You want to come hang out so we can go? So Care Bear came over to my house, and the two of us just walked over and entered the woods from the town entrance again. And so we're walking, nothing's happening. We pass the benches, the rest stop, nothing happens. And we get all the way around 50% of the way again into the open field. And we hear it. But now it's not coming from that direction, from the opposite direction as it was the other night. Now it's coming from behind us, across the fence to the golf course, or the scrap wasteland. And that is like, the 50% mark is a straight path from the fence, basically. So we can almost see it. So we walk over to the fence, and we get down on our hands and knees, and we're just peeking through, looking in the direct path to where this music should have been coming from, right at this tree in the scrap wasteland. Not the same tree as the corn. That would just be too much. But we're looking at this other tree in the scrap wasteland, and we don't see anything. But that is literally where this music is coming from. Keep in mind, this time the music was like singing, like this light singing, similar to the night before, but it wasn't as distorted. So we just hop the fence, because, that's the logical next step, and we start walking across the scrap wasteland to investigate. And all of a sudden, Care Bear just turns around and sprints back to the fence and jumps over. And I'm startled. I'm freaked out. So I turn around and I follow him, run back over the fence, hop it, and we're both in the woods. He's calmed down, and I'm just like, dude, what was that? And he tells me, I was walking, and I heard just like a pop in my ear, like a voice, like a yell or something, like a ah! And so he came and ran back over the fence. Or at least that is what I recall him telling me at the time. Anyways, the two of us leave the woods because we're thoroughly freaked out. And then we go over to my cousin's house. And I'm like, cousin, there is some weird, like, trick or treat, because that, I think, was his favorite movie at the time, shit happening in the woods. We should go back tonight. And my cousin is a skeptic, so he was like, yeah, sure, okay, let's go back tonight. And so we do. That night at around 11 o'clock or closer to midnight, because, that's when the prime hours are, we went back in through the entrance from the town, and we walk 50% of the way, bam, right, maybe in the exact same spot, we hear the music again. And this time it's not coming from the scrap wasteland. This time it's coming from the same direction it was coming from the first night that I encountered it. And so we're there looking at it, and we don't run, because I've heard this twice now. Care Bear's heard it once. My cousin is a bit of a skeptic, so he's still kind of figuring out how he feels. And we talk amongst ourselves, but eventually we arrive at the conclusion that we were definitely going to arrive at. We just lightly turn around, walk a couple of steps, and then run the hell out of there. Because the thing is, we were considering trying to track this music down, but from the 50% mark to like the 75% mark of the woods is just the darkest, dourest path. It has the most trees overhead, blocking out any sort of light. It's dark, it's creepy, it's scary just going there without whatever the hell this music was. So we decided we were definitely not taking that path to try to track it down. So that was night 3, and all of that took place on a weekend. So now, skip ahead a year, actually. So my senior year of high school. And I'm in my senior year, I've got the chip on my shoulder. I'm like, man, I want to freaking conquer my town. So I thought, you know what? I've always been scared of those woods, but I'm about to conquer my town, dude. I'm going to go to those woods at night, alone. And so I call up my friend Big D one weekend. That's what we're calling him, Big D. And I say, Big D, got any plans for this weekend? And he was like, no, trying to hang. And I was like, yeah, why don't we get the whole crew and just go out one night? And so Big D is like, yeah, let me get my crew. He's got a bit of a different crew than the people I usually hang out with, so no Care Bear, no Muscle, no Bubba, no Cousin, but I still like his crew, so I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I'll go out with Big D's crew. Hell yeah. And he's like, okay, where should I pick you up? And I say, Big D, don't pick me up at my house. Pick me up from the woods. And Big D's like, the wood? You're gonna go into the woods alone? And I was like, yeah, I'm Big D now, Big D. And Big D was like, message received loud and clear. I'm going to pick the man up from the woods. And so the plans were made. And that night, about, I don't know, 10 o'clock. Yeah, probably 10 o'clock, because we were planning to go out, late at night and just kind of drive around. But about 10 o'clock, I head to the woods, because that's when Big D was going to pick me up, around 10:15. No, around 10:30, because I still needed time to get to the 20% mark. So I get to the 20% mark at around 10:15. So I've got 15 minutes before Big D calls me, and then I walk back out of the woods. Probably take around 10 minutes, so we just go out at 10:40. The point is, I'm here at the 20% mark, and I'm sitting there on the benches alone. And to that point in my life, I don't think I had ever been as freaked the hell out as I was. Every single acorn that dropped was, oh my God, what was that? But I was there. I was conquering my town. Couldn't move. Couldn't cowered out. So I was sitting there. And like 20 minutes pass. No call from Big D. So I called Big D and I'm like, hey Big D, where are you? And he's like, oh yeah, just rounding out the rest of the troops. We'll be there soon. Okay. Hang up. Still in the woods alone, just sitting there. A couple acorns dropped. Whoa, what was that? Just more of that, nothing more, nothing less. Another 20 minutes pass. So I call Big D again. Big D, where the hell are you, man? And Big D tells me, hey, listen, we're at the entrance to the woods from the town. We're kind of hovering out here. The car is parked, but we're not getting out. And I don't know if you should come out because there are like 2 cop cars right outside the entrance to the woods. And I was like, what? And he was like, yeah, there are 2 cop cars and they have their lights on. And at that moment, I saw what looked like 2 flashlight beams coming directly towards me from the path that leads to the entrance from the town. So 2 policemen with flashlights presumably headed directly my way. And the only thing in my mind was, whatever the hell they're in here looking for, if they see me sitting on this bench alone at like 11 o'clock in the freaking buck-ass woods at night, they're gonna think it's me. So I get up and I run. And I run to one of the entrances to the woods from the public park that's beneath it. And I get out on the public park. And the public park is swarmed with policemen with flashlights looking all around. I don't have anything shiny or, reflective on me. And I think I was wearing all black, which would have made getting caught even worse. But I'm looking, but they can't see me because of that. But I can certainly see all of them. So I run back into the woods, and I run all the way around to the 50% mark to where the road is. And I get out on the road. So I'm out of the woods, clear of any suspicion, and I call Big D. And Big D comes and picks me up on the road. And, we didn't really, we shot the shit about it, like, oh, that was pretty weird, but it wasn't a big thing. But despite me getting over it and just moving on and having fun, there was still that itch in the back of my mind. Because I was thinking, like, they weren't looking for me in there that night. So, whatever they were looking for, the entire time I was sitting there alone, it was in there with me. And that unsettled me. Fast forward a couple of months. So we're getting close to all of us going away for college. And I'm out to dinner with Care Bear and a couple of girls. And, we want to impress the girls. So we tell them about the woods and the weird kind of thing that happened in there. And when I brought up the part where we ran out because Care Bear heard, we ran out of the scrap wasteland because Care Bear heard that loud noise in his ear, he kind of looked at me and he was like, is that what I said? And I was like, yeah, that's what I remember you saying. And he was like, okay. Yeah, I guess that's what I said. And then we just kind of went on, both of us telling the story together. But then after the dinner, Care Bear and I got back into our car, or I think it was Care Bear's car, alone. The girls weren't there. And he said, dude, that's not what happened to me that day. When we got to the scrap wasteland, and we were looking at that tree because we thought that's where the music was coming from. When we turned the bend and got to the other side of the tree, I swear to you, I saw something sitting there, cross-legged, rocking back and forth with just greasy, wet, black hair all over it. And Care Bear is like one of my best friends, so he doesn't really bullshit me like that. And even if he did, he would tell me eventually that it was a joke within the night. And he didn't. So, I believe him. And we look at each other, and we're thinking, you know what? All of this confusion just means one thing. We do need to go back to those woods tonight to brush up on whatever the hell is going on there. So we go. And we walk in through the town entrance as per usual. We circle the bend, get to the 50% mark, and nothing happened. But we're looking at the road, and across from the road is like this huge, expansive private preserve that is also the woods, but it's like the woods I've been talking about, but times 10. And on the other end, it ends in a beach with some sand dunes and just the open water. And we're looking at the fence to that private preserve across the road. And we're like, nothing's really happening in the regular woods tonight. Let's just go crazy and just hop the fence into the preserve. And we do. So we go to the preserve. The preserve is on the regular when there's no creepy music in the woods. The preserve has the regular woods beat by a freaking country mile when it comes to creepiness. The preserve is dead dark. And like I said, the woods are kind of a central facet of the town. So you get the orange streetlights peeking in and you get the sounds of cars. But the preserve is not. The preserve is out there. In fact, it's so out there that it's not, stereotypically silent. It's actually like constantly awash with the sounds of different animals. So we're just walking through listening to freaking, I don't know what animals calling each other, thinking, oh yeah, we fucked up. But we had to take a circular path to get back to the entrance. Anyways, it was kind of like the regular woods, except much longer. So we take the circular path. The circular path leads us over the sand dunes. And we're walking over the sand dunes looking at the water, a beautiful sight. We didn't want to go down to the beach because that would involve falling off the sand dunes. So we're just walking the path on the sand dunes. And we heard it. For the first time in, a year. I mean, even more than a year, we heard it. We heard the singing. And we're like, no way. So we just follow it, and it leads us back to the entrance to the preserve, hop the fence, avoid the guards, which made it even more exciting. Like 2 things we have to deal with now. But we hop the fence, we go back to the regular woods, because that's where it leads us, and it leads us all the way to the public park, because we're following it now, right? Like, we're curious, we're already scared out of our wits, we're on the private preserve, there's nowhere we can run, so we followed it. And in following it, we discovered that the closer and closer you get to this music, the further and further away it gets. And so we started to test it. So when we got to the public park, we stopped following it, and it just kind of held constant. And Okay, one of the creepier things to note is that this night, the singing was different. It wasn't like the operatic singing, and in fact, it wasn't really anything close to singing at all. It was like popular songs that you would hear on the radio. I'm not going to sing or mimic or play any of them for copyright reasons, but it was popular songs you would hear on the radio. Like that night, it was Island in the Sun and a couple of other ones, except they were being played or like sung or whatever or mimicked in a minor key. So it would be like the song, but it would be a distorted, unfamiliar version of it, but just familiar enough to get you interested. So we would walk towards it. We would stop. It would stay constant. And then we would test it even more. We would start to walk away from it. And when we walked away from it, it went back to its old behavior of following us. It was almost as if this thing wasn't hunting us, but it was just curious about us, and it wanted to learn more, just like we wanted to learn more about it. And eventually we just got tired out, because this thing, it would be like the same distance from us constantly. Like we walked towards it, it would be that far away. We walked away from it, it would be that close, but still that far away. So we got tired, and we said screw it, and we went home. A couple of weeks passed. Now we're in August. We're right on the cusp of leaving for college, all of us. And it's Care Bear's birthday. And this birthday was kind of a shitty one, because I was depressed about something. Care Bear was depressed about something. I can't remember exactly what, but we were both high schoolers, so it probably had to do with girls. But yeah, we were just looking at each other, and we were like, man, we need some adrenaline. You know what, tonight, let's just get off our asses and go to the freaking woods. Because we were interested. We had this kind of scientific experiment with the music a couple of weeks before, so we wanted to see if we could get it to act up again. So that night, around 11:30 or whatever, happy birthday to Care Bear, we got up and we headed to the entrance to the woods from the town. And we get there, and we take 2 steps into the woods, and I had, I was already depressed, but I had like a horrid feeling 2 steps in. It was like my stomach just dropped, and I looked at Care Bear, and I was like, man, I feel awful, and he was like, yeah, dude, me too. Like, I feel so much worse just coming into the woods. It was really like in scuba diving, they have a term, thermocline, which is when you pass a certain point and the temperature just dramatically drops. It was like that, except with like sadness and depression and fear. And so we're like, I want to keep going, we came here for the fun. And so we take a couple of more steps, and the woods on this specific night were looking like dark as hell. I don't know what it was. The orange street lights were blocked out that night, but the path looked so dark. So we took a couple of more steps in, but we're anxious, we're hesitant. We took a couple of more steps in, like 30 steps into the woods. From the center of the woods, we hear a horrible noise. It sounds like the most pain-induced moan I had ever heard in my entire life. Like, I'm gonna try to do it here. I'll probably add a VFX over it, or SFX, because it's gonna sound like a stereotypical ghost sound effect. It was just like, it was just, for as like hockey, cheesy, and stereotypical as that sounded, this was like one of the worst things I've ever heard in my life. It sounded like immense pain, but the person couldn't decide whether or not they enjoyed it. It was just weird. And me and Care Bear looked at each other, and we were like, that's it, we're out. Because that gave me an awful feeling. And that was the last time I went into the woods at night. But it wasn't the last time I went into the woods, period. Because a couple of days after that, I was dog sitting for a family dog. And now this is like I think I might have been leaving for college in like a couple of days, so it was the last spare few days in my hometown. And the dog is a German Shepherd, so it's basically a freaking wolf. And it was one day that I had to dog sit for it. But it's a German Shepherd, it needs a place to walk, and the only place around that a big freaking shambling ass animal like that could walk was, of course, the woods. So I, a bit hesitantly, took the dog for a walk in the woods that day. So I mentioned the inner paths in the woods, and I mentioned the center. This center is interesting because it was kind of a fixture for us. We called it the pit. And that was because when we were younger, the town was dumping a bunch of sand in there. I don't know why. So we called it the sand pit. But then the town, like, over time, just gradually started to dump just shit in there. Like, just random stuff, like mildew, like old compost. And it started to smell awful. So it went from the sand pit to the pit. And even when it was the sand pit, I never liked the pit. I didn't like going there. I never went there at night. And when it started to smell horrible, it just turned me off from it even more. The place just gave me a bad vibe. But German Shepherd is strong. And when you're walking a full-grown German Shepherd, wherever the German Shepherd wants to walk, you're going. And it pulled me into the pit. And it's unpleasant because not only do I dislike the place, but you have to walk through a bunch of shrubbery to get there. There's not like a really established path. It's from the inner paths, some of which are nice, but some of which are more what you would call homebrew paths. And so the German Shepherd pulls me in, and I'm standing there in the pit with it. And we're looking at just this like dead area of the woods that's just got all this crap laid all over it. And we see something. We see a little thing with what I would describe as a reddish color, about the size of a fox. But it was hopping on its hind legs, and its front arms were like close. I couldn't really see them, but they looked like they were close up to the body, like kind of like a T-Rex arm. And it was hopping. It had the physicality of like a kangaroo, but like, I was from the South, but the American South, so like we're not that far south. It definitely wasn't a kangaroo, and it was too small, and it was weird. It was like, it had this musculature to it, and it was hopping, and it was making this noise, this awful noise, like it was like it was laughing, but it couldn't get the laughs out because it had holes in its lungs or something. I don't know. That's just the way I thought of it. So me and the German Shepherd just watched this little, like, impish thing hop across the pit and then disappear into the tree line on the other side. This German Shepherd, if it sees a squirrel, it's all out war. I'm not unconvinced that it wouldn't, like, chase a fly throughout the entire freaking state. It is the most finicky, anxious. If it sees an animal, barking after it, just chasing it. It was looking at this thing, stone silent, and it was standing perfectly still. And again, I had an itch, but it was worse. Because, like, at the back of my mind, there was this itch, and it's crazy. You're going to think I'm crazy, but I had this feeling because I was just looking at this creature's hind legs and it was hopping away from me, that I really didn't want it to turn around and look at me, because I thought if it did look at me, it would have a face that was like human-like. And I was like convinced in the back of my mind when I was looking at this creature that if it turned around and looked at me, its face would look exactly the same as mine.
Hello? Hello?